Hello and welcome. Welcome to Solution Sunday because the soul is the solution. I'm Lisa Warner. I am the host, and we are here today with Elaine Godley. She's an award winning health advisor and nutritional wellness mentor. Today, we are going to be talking about all kinds of natural healing. Elaine and I both have healed ourselves from cancer naturally. So we've got lots of things to share with you today. Elaine, good morning, good afternoon, where you are. In
Yeah, good afternoon. It's 3 something over here in the Algarve in Portugal. Thank you for inviting me, Lisa.
You are so very welcome. Thank you for joining us. So, Elaine, why don't you start out by just kind of sharing some of your story with us?
Okay, so where to start really? It's difficult to know which thread to start off with.
Exactly. Just
Mm,
kind of my thing is I always just kind of pick one and go with it, and it
yeah,
always comes back around. So we'll cover
okay.
everything.
So I had the thing that I'm known for is that I've had 4 different versions of cancer, and I've also cured myself of a kidney disease. And I was given less than a year to live in 2015 with stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that kind of sets the scene as to why I do what I do now, because I can. I do what I do because I can. I've got the knowledge, I've got training. But if you'd asked me even a few years ago, would I be an award winning health and wellbeing mentor? I wouldn't have even known what one of those was, never mind be one. So my journey has taken me through a whole load of stuff in life. I'm 65 now, so I've been around the block a few times, got myself dizzy, reinvented myself many times, and I've had lots of adversity throughout my life. And looking back now, they've all been gifts. They've been gifts on resilience, they've all been lessons. And I find that when I interview people for my podcast, the those of us who've gone through adversity, we don't, we're not victims. We don't go, oh dear, poor me, poor you, whatever. It's just like, oh, shit happens. How do we get out of that one? And then you learn from it, and then you go on, and we still stumble, we still get ourselves into hot water, but we're more resilient. We've got this bounce back ability. So I've done so many things in life, so many things in life. We were talking before we came on air about school and not wanting to be there, big time not wanting to go there. I got myself in trouble on day one. I threw my satchel round the head of the head teacher. I literally swung my age 4, swung the satchel round and hit the head teacher around the head. Um, and I remember being in primary school and smacking my teacher around the face. She was looking down at me. I was probably about, I don't know, 8, 9 years old possibly, and I'm left-handed, and I was the only person in my whole school that's left-handed. And I didn't endure what somebody told me the other day that they endured, that they had to have their hand tied behind their back, which is just horrendous. I didn't have
Oh,
that, but
wow.
I had a lot of nagging. And so I'm looking up at her in the front of the class, right spectacle, and she's looking down at me going, no, 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 nag, nag, nag. And I looked up and I thought, oh, I've had enough of you, and I smacked her around the face. Which I mean is funny now, but goodness no, my parents never found out about it. But anyway, there we are. So I've always been a bit of a rebel. I've always done things my way. So when I was given less than a year to live in 2015, nobody tells me when I'm going to die. I die when I'm ready. I'm not frightened of dying, but I go when I'm ready on my terms, and that's it.
Wow, that's amazing. What a spectacular story. Your story is quite the opposite of mine. Like I kind of gave up all of my own personal integrity, I guess you would say. I just kind of followed the program, and I tried to not make waves. And so that my story was kind of the opposite of yours in that respect, but it very much the same. Once I got older and started to really realize, like, wait a second, it was the cancer that really woke me up and realized, like, oh my God, I have to be me. Like I have to actually be who I truly am because that's going to be the solution. The soul is the solution.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love what
It's
you say about the adversity being the gift.
absolutely, absolutely. And everybody I've spoken to, excuse me, I need to muck myself down. It's really, really hot here, and if I put my fan on, we can't hear each other speak. So I'm just going to have to put up with this, I'm afraid.
Um,
Um, so yeah, when I've interviewed other people who have stories of all kinds of adversities, that we all say the same thing. It's a gift, and we don't look at life in the same way thereafter. So each of my experiences, I was actually born with a kidney disease that wasn't detected until I was in my early 20s, about 21, 22, and I was blue lighted in an ambulance to an isolation ward. They thought I had typhoid. And I was a competitive swimmer in my teens. I was kind of discovered, as it was described, when I was 9 with the perfect breaststroke. And I ended up representing my county at national level and so on and so forth. And I was training twice a day in a chlorinated pool. And I was constantly getting waterwork infections or projectile vomiting and misdiagnosed many times. And eventually, they thought I had typhoid. So I went to this isolation ward and all the hazmat outfits on and what have we. It was a bit scary.
oh my God.
And eventually, I got diagnosed with a condition called medullary sponge kidneys, which, according to the medics, is incurable. And I was told I'd be on medication for life. So, being dutiful, I listened to the doctors. I had private health care then. I was under Harley Street care. And I'd get checked up every 6 months. I was on a cocktail of antibiotics, rotating for 3 weeks. I'd take one for a week, then another for a week, and then a different one, and then I'd start from week 1 again. This went on until my mid 40s, and I was having regular 6 monthly checks. So in my mid 40s, I went to see a chiropractor because one day I literally couldn't get out of bed. I was in a terrible state with pain with my back, and I've got a twisted and curved spine and a bit of spina bifida at the bottom. So my back gave out. I saw the chiropractor, and his version of what was wrong with me was the bladder and kidney area, the spine, the vertebrae that serves the spine, the kidney and bladder area. That was my worst area, my worst problem area. His girlfriend is a nutritionist, so she introduced me to hair analysis, which I use now with my clients. I'm going back now over 20 years. Um, so the combination of shiatsu, chiropractic care, nutrition, diet, lifestyle changes, all that kind of stuff. I then, over a period of months, got the confidence to wean myself off of these antibiotics I'd been on for 23 years. So it literally was, off the medication gradually and diet, lifestyle, and that was it. So I cured myself completely naturally from a kidney disease that allegedly is incurable. And not many people know about this condition today. I spent my life up to that point teaching doctors about it. And the only person that I'd met who'd had it and knew what I was talking about was the nurse who checked me in when I had my mastectomy in 2009. So it is an unusual condition, but it no longer bothers me, and my kidneys work better than the average person. So it just shows what you can do through diet and lifestyle and mindset.
Absolutely. We are never, you know, if we don't actually look for a solution, we never find it. And if we just simply go by what the doctors tell us and we just keep taking the medication, we never find out that we actually don't need to live on it for the rest of our lives.
Exactly, but we're not taught that, are we? At school, it's not education; it's indoctrination at school.
That
And if I had school-aged children, I mentioned this to you before. If I had school-aged children, there's no way on this earth that I would send them to school. No way at all.
never,
Um,
ever, ever.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's another topic.
Yeah. I call it indoctrination.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I've always challenged um, things that I felt comfortable to. Well, I've always kind of pushed myself and questioned the status quo. If I kind of did stay at school, but I used to bunk off quite a lot and go missing. But most of the time I'd be on the sports field or in the gym or in the swimming pool or wherever I could escape to. So I was kind of invisible, except when sports were involved, and I won everything. In fact, they created Stephen Needham, who sadly we just buried with pancreatic cancer. He and I were in the same situation. We just excelled at sport, no matter what sport it was. And instead of giving us individual trophies for all the events, they created Victrix Lidorum that year, especially for us. So I've still got my little plaque. So that's how I kept sane at school, because I didn't fit in. I wasn't ever so clever. I was above average, but I wasn't a student, good student by any means. And I often used to get thrown out of class for larking about because I couldn't see the point of what they were teaching me. So I would just make my own amusement.
Wow, good for you for being
Mm-hmm.
for standing up for your own individuality.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I had a very similar story because I just excelled at athletics as well. And I was a figure skater, and the ice rink was right next door to the school. So anytime that I could, I was over at the rink instead of being in school. And that was the only place that I could actually just be myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved being on the ice. So I spent as much time at the rink as possible. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
I did eventually get to the education piece. I started my first business when I was early 20s. So around about the time I was diagnosed with this kidney condition, I was starting a business with my second husband, and it was kitchen design and installation. And we built very quickly over a short period of time, which is a business mistake, but obviously look back on that, and that's how I can guide other people in business. But we did very, very well. We had 4 kitchen showrooms, design and installation. We had a big contract business. I can walk along the River Thames to this day and show you all the buildings that we put kitchens in and that I help project manage and so on. And then in mid-80s it all went wrong when I discovered that my husband of the day was going around upsetting people. I didn't realise the effort I was putting in placating them. And then we went on holiday. The bank manager said, and bank managing those days were totally different to what we've got today. There was no business guidance, no advice, no nothing. So the bank manager said, go on holiday, come back and we'll sort things out, because I thought I was ever so clever. I'd sold a big contract to a big builder, and it was the first exclusive in the UK sheltered accommodation that we know today as sheltered accommodation. So kind of for the over 50s going into supported accommodation, and in those days, if you there was not so much credit management and business legislation rules or whatever. So if there was a doorknob missing, the contractor could hold up 5, 10, 15,000. And in those days, and I'm going back early 80s, cash flow wise, it was really quite critical. So we kept going for a while. We came back from holiday and the bank manager had changed and he immediately pulled the rug. So in 1986, I woke up to the fact that I was living with an alcoholic, and that the business had literally stopped overnight. And we were nearly 2 million turnover, so it was a sizable business. And with it came lots of stresses and strains, and which we know that leads up to cancer, because creating my body into the environment that is inflamed and under stress and so on, it's all ripe for cancer. But nothing. Oh, I did actually get yellow jaundice. I woke up one day and I was completely yellow, even with the whites of my eyes. My whole body was yellow. That's the only stress thing that came up at the time. So in 1986, I went into London, got myself a job as an admin assistant in a firm of accountants. And then, long story short, over a period of 12 years, I ended up, I did a master's degree, I did an MBA in legal practice, I became chief executive of a law firm. I ran one of Ernst & Young's consulting divisions in London as chief operating officer. And I did the MBA because I was running meetings with lawyers and barristers, all men. I was the only woman in the room. And yet I didn't even have an A level to my name. I just barely got through. I left school as soon as I could. I literally just didn't turn up one day, and I just went and got myself a job in London. Um, so I call it my Up Yours MBA. So
I
one of the
love
best things I ever did. So yeah, so I did get to the education eventually, but in my terms, when I was ready and so on. And I graduated when I was 40. So that was 25 years ago, although I remember it like it was yesterday. And then 1998, I'd had enough of all the corporate nonsense, and I was pulled, every day to the corporate values and my own personal values. And I was having chief operating conversations with my team. I had over 200 staff in the office, and then I was taking them round to the pub, the wine bar, a walk in the park, the coffee bar, whatever was appropriate for their personality style, shall we say, and having an Elaine conversation. And then one day, everything exploded, and I literally just walked out. And that was in 1998, and never looked back. So, and of course, all of that is creating the environment for cancer, which came along years later. So I then went to become I thought, what will I do? I'm early 40s, MBA, but email was just coming up then. So 1998, email applications were the thing of the day for jobs. So I applied, and I got 100 rejections, and I didn't want to work for somebody else anyway. I'd had my own business years ago. So it was the universe just saying, well, do your thing. But what do I do? Well, I had all this experience about running a business, and I'd got my master's, so I thought I'd be a consultant, which I did, and I had very good life as a business consultant and transformational change agent, and helping lots of businesses and teams and so on. And that's where I learnt mostly, and did my training on disc behavioural profiling.
Wow. So what is that?
So disc behavioural profiling, it, DISC is a very common. It's one of the early profiling tools, but it's not so. It's very widely used, but it's not so common these days. It's similar to you might have heard of Myers Briggs or Enneagram. There's various different tools where you can identify somebody's personality. So when I was running, so in the mid 90s, I was head of department for a law firm at the time, and I was introduced. One of the directors that reported into me said about using it for recruitment, using this particular tool, and I didn't know anything about it. So I said, well, okay, we'll give it a try. So what it does is just a series of questions, and you can see what somebody's personality traits are naturally and what they are currently behaving like in the world of work or the public face. So it's like people put on a mask. So when you meet somebody for the first time, you actually don't know if that's the true person, or you're meeting the actor, shall we say.
Right.
So ideally, what we want to see is who you are in work is the same as who you are out of work. What you see is what you get, no matter what. So Michelle loves the Enneagram. Yes, the Enneagram is interesting. I chose not to use that one because to me that's a bit too complicated. DISC is very, very simple, and I chose DISC because I could use it with students, people like me at school. If I'd understood my behavioural style, things may have panned out differently. So I chose, once I'd done my initial training, to work as a consultant with schools, and I was mentoring head teachers, I was supporting senior management teams, and then I was then supporting the students in the school as well, helping them to understand what their behavioural characteristics are, so that they can then shine and step into who they are, rather than trying to be somebody that everybody wants them to be. So throughout that period, I did many years volunteering and consultancy work in schools, working at all levels, from tiny tots to the head teacher, and everybody in between. So over the years, I've become a specialist in the DISC model, and used it in work, for work environment, for team dynamics, and in families, for helping families to better understand one another, and so on. So it's a very versatile tool. It's a very simple tool, and I now have my own model. So I actually make my model available free of charge to people working with students, as a kind of give back, pay back type of thing, that I wish I'd had that access to that when I was at school. So I trained people on how to interpret the reports, but they have it free of charge to use to go into schools or in any other way that they might work with students.
Wow, that's amazing. That's beautiful. And where would people go to find that?
On my website, so it's discplus.health is my website, but they need to email me to discuss it, and you know to use it in the right, you know, appropriate way. But it's such a versatile tool. But I've had my own model created, but I link it with health. So DISC was originally identified, or what we know today as DISC, and all of the modern behavioural profiling tools, including the Enneagram, all started life with Hippocrates in 400 BC, who was a doctor. So I've now kind of reintroduced DISC, and I don't know anybody. And when I talk to people in corporate, you know, their eyes pop out and their jaw drops, because nobody deals in DISC profiling and relates it to health. So I can tell the health of somebody by looking at their behavioural profile report. I can tell also what they're likely to be suffering from as well. So with my health training and my huge experience of running big teams and small teams and everything in between, I've created a way that I can help people to be their true selves. And it's very, very simple. And even though I'm based in the Algarve in Portugal, I'm still supporting students in England through a charity that I've trained, and they use my tool. And my grandson doesn't know this, but I've supported some of his peers. Hasn't got a clue, so it makes me chuckle.
Ah, that's beautiful. Wow. You know, I love that you're connecting this with health and the true self with health, because when we when we go to school, we're all taught to be the exact same, do the same thing. Everybody sit here, everybody listen, everybody learn the same thing. And just like you, most people don't want to be there.
Mm.
Most people don't want to be sitting there all day long as children. We want to be outside. We want to be playing. We want to be doing sports. We want to be having fun. And but that's not the way this society is set up. So we become these alternate versions of ourselves,
Mm.
and we lose ourselves in the mind. We're body, mind, and soul, and we're sent off to school to get fully indoctrinated into the mind and have our minds busy and have our minds focused on
Mm-hmm.
whatever they want our minds to focus on. But as creator beings, we create what we're focused on. So when we're in school and we're focused on, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here, this is awful, you know, I'm getting my hand slapped because I'm using the wrong hand. I
Mm.
mean, this is just really abuse.
Mm. Yeah.
And we create these alternate selves, and then we forget that we are not this alternate self. And this is really in my inner knowing, you know, this is the root of all quote unquote dis-ease on the planet, is that we're not seen as the beautiful individuals that we are. You know, our every soul is created completely and totally unique. You know, we're all here to be totally uniquely ourselves, but we're indoctrinated into these systems of sameness.
Mm, absolutely, and that's where linking it. I spent 2 years as a volunteer on the helpline for a cancer charity. So I was the Wednesday lady. People phoned this charity on a Wednesday that just had a new diagnosis of cancer. I'd take the call and I would guide people and support them and so on. So I was seeing patterns over this 2 year period. I was seeing patterns of the types of things that people were struggling with, the individuals and the families. So I created a program which I take people through, that I mentor. And there's 10 areas that people struggle with, and it's just ordinary things in life. But when you build them up, it's quite a lot to be managing when you have an illness to be dealing with, and you've got the expectations, the fears of family and friends. You've got the doctors telling you something else. You don't know which way is up. So the whole thing is a complete minefield. So it's no wonder people struggle with healing. when they don't know which way to go. So then they end up just going down the medical route, and we know 9 times out of 10, at best, they will have 5 years. But that's at best. Very often they don't make that, because all the medics do is sticking plaster, cutting, burning, poisoning, and it's not the doctor's fault. That's the way they've been trained and indoctrinated.
Exactly.
So it's a whole combination of things when we're dealing with an illness of sorts. So that's why I've kind of, the light bulb went on one day, and I realised that our disc behaviours and the health, and then the connection of Hippocrates, who identified the four humours, there's something here. So I worked out how I could bring that into the disc model. So the report that comes out is not the same as the average disc report that you buy commercially. There's all kinds of information in there, including pictures of animals. So when I was supporting schools, even the tiny tots in kindy age, there's four animals, and when the children were asked to identify if they were one of those four animals, which would you identify with, virtually 99.9% of the time they would identify with an animal where you could physically see their behaviours manifesting. So that way then I was able to guide the teachers on lesson planning. I mean, I'm not a teacher, I don't really know the first thing about lesson planning, but I know about behaviour. So I was saying, well, these types of people need structure, these type of people need freedom, and so on and so forth. So it's amazing how you can use the DISC model in a variety of different settings.
Wow, that's beautiful. And so are there schools that are starting to use that then?
Well, there's only one charity, so I only had this created in the last 18 months. So there's one charity that, prior to me having my own tool, I was paying every year for 20 years an annual fee to use somebody else's tool. So when I first trained this charity, I was using that tool. They're now using my tool, and actually they were instrumental in helping me with some of the wording on the questions, because the other tool was a bit too highbrow for some of the students, their understanding. So that's how my model got created, as a fusion really between the corporate one I was using and the students that they've been supporting.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, and when we start to see these different types of stresses that we get placed under, there's a direct correlation between the type of stress and the type of physical dis-ease in the body. We find that the body is designed to handle different types of stresses in very specific ways. And when we start to see what type of quote unquote dis-ease a person has, we can see what type of stress they're under. So this is really important to understand the link between these types of stresses and what's going on in our physical body.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's certain conditions that each of the different behavioural styles are predisposed towards. So when I see somebody's profile report without even meeting them, I can tell the likelihood of what's wrong with them. Whether it's high blood pressure or burnout or IBS or the mental, severe mental strain, whatever. I can hazard a guess, quite an educated guess from the data that I'm seeing on the reports, and then of course that information can be used to help them, to help the employer to support them, as well as themselves unravel where they're at. So yeah, it's very very interesting, and I've invented it, so I'm really quite chuffed with myself, for doing that. But it's early days, and I've not. In fact, tomorrow I start with a coach. Tomorrow I've hired a top coach, because I need taken in hand. I've got so many ideas. I'm buzzing, and I go off. I go down rabbit holes, and I'm interested in so many new things, and I don't focus too well, because I want to know about everything. So I need keeping on track. So as of tomorrow, I'm starting with a coach, and I've just registered a new company to specifically look at the link between disc and health. And my website is discplus.health. So it's very very exciting.
Oh, congratulations. Kudos to you. That's phenomenal. So when I found myself facing cancer, it was completely obvious to me that it was the stress that I was under was affecting my physical structure. So my entire approach was not to try to fix my physical structure, but to try to fix the stress that I was under. And, when we start to really understand that it is the stress that we are under that the body is responding to, it becomes far more clear that the body doesn't need all of these fancy medical procedures. We need to learn how to mitigate the stress and neutralize that stress. Because once we de-stress ourselves, we de-stress the body and the health returns.
Yeah, absolutely. It's apart from what I've told you, there's lots of other stresses that came into my life. I was abducted as a child, or attempted abduction as a child. Luckily, a neighbour saw what was happening and called the police just in time. This man was going into the forest with me in his arms. That happened when I was about 6. My second husband strangled and left me for dead,
Oh,
and then I had all the stresses and strains with the business, and the also the and we ended up going into liquidation, which wasn't pretty. And then I've had all kinds of other stresses and strains. My granddaughter died as well, 2010. She's in fact she would next weekend coming. She would have been 14. She was 17 months old, and her MMR jab uh, was the uh, was the thing that happened 10 days before she died. So go figure. My daughter disagrees with it, but she
right.
follows the doctors in every case. But
Yeah. And then they
you know,
call it,
mm,
sudden infant death syndrome.
mm,
Like
yeah,
just out of the blue, they just simply
mm,
depart. Like it's not
yeah.
out of the blue, people. We need to
No,
really
it's
start to
not.
look and see what's actually happening here.
Yeah.
Now we have the apparently sudden adult death
Yeah, it's funny
syndrome.
that, isn't it? Yeah, people haven't
So
seen the dots.
the real mystery
Mm,
is how this is happening. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I've got fed up with the whole thing now. I got very vocal about it, and I've been thrown off Facebook several times, and I was very angry about the whole thing because I could see what was happening, and the
Yeah.
whole thing was a complete and utter hoax. But that's not helping me or anybody else, so I don't say too much about it now. I just don't engage with it, full stop, and I don't engage with people who have the views that disagree with me. Life's too short, I know what I need to do to keep myself busy, healthy.
Right.
I know what I need to do to help my clients, and that's what I concentrate on these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
I'm in the exact same boat that it doesn't help anybody else if we're not out there and being able to be heard and
mm.
seen. And the people who are ready are the ones that are finding us. So,
Yes, yeah,
when the student is ready, the teacher will appear and vice versa. And the other ones who are not on the same page yet, well, they will be at some point, or they will be departed from their body. So
yeah,
you
yeah.
know
And everybody has choices. That's the big thing I've learned in the last couple of years. Everybody has choices, and it's not my place to voice, you know, push myself onto other people, which is what I was doing. So I've had, big wake up call and big lesson. But clients who come to me, this has happened for years. Some people come to me that they've literally been sent home to die. I've been able to give them, in some cases, we've turned things around totally. Some cases, they've had 2, 3 years extra. Some
right,
cases, it's too little, too late. But, that's the way things are. But in this current climate, those who have compromised their immune system by what they've chosen to take, um, I say to them, well, you have compromised your immune system, which means you've got to work doubly hard. Are you up for it? And not everybody is. Some
mm,
people just roll over and literally die. Well, that's their choice.
yeah,
So, whereas the old Elaine used to be, oh, come on, rally around, etc. I'm not wasting my energy anymore. It's their choice, and that's up to them. So, sounds a bit hard faced and whatnot, but I walk my talk and I keep myself well. And I can't waste my energy or my time on pointless causes, really, and I'm not going to.
Yeah. It was a hard lesson. That was a hard lesson for me to learn
Mm.
in the beginning, with people
Mm.
reaching out going, I know I can heal myself, but then they didn't take any of the
Mm.
steps necessary. But my doctor keeps saying I keep going, and I'm like, you're still going back and doing the exact same
Mm.
things. This isn't going to work. Like
Yeah,
you can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result.
yeah.
If you're not going to do the work
Mm.
that I'm helping you with, then it's certainly not going to do you any good. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's a lesson in discernment to learn, who's reaching out just out of desperation, but are not willing to do the work, and the ones who are actually looking to change their lives. It's a
Mm,
big difference.
absolutely. I give a health warning, and I tell people up front that I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I will tell you what you need to do, what you need to know, not necessarily what you want to know. So it's your choice. If we can get past that, welcome aboard. If not, well, go somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. My whole approach is you have to be able to return to who you truly are. You
Mm.
have to be able to return to your soul self, and which means you have to let go of all of the mental programming that you've
Mm.
received. We have all been taught very, very backwards. We've all been taught that, there's something wrong with our bodies. There's nothing wrong with our
Mm.
bodies. Our bodies are doing exactly what they need to do in order to help us survive. And then the medical model goes, oh, well, there's something wrong. You're being attacked by a disease. Like, that's simply
Mm.
not what's happening to any of us. So once we
Yeah.
start to really understand the brilliance of our bodies, this kind of goes back to earlier in the conversation. If we don't look for the brilliant self-healing ability of the body, we will never see it. We will
Yeah.
never find it. We will just continue to go down the medical rabbit hole of death.
Mm.
It's
Absolutely.
it's really insidious programming telling everyone that, oh, they lost their battle with cancer. No,
Mm.
they did not lose their
Mm.
battle with cancer. They lost their battle with big pharma and
Mm.
the medical society. There's no such thing as cancer. It doesn't really exist, because once we start to understand that our body is responding to the stress, the body is creating those cells for a reason, we start to realize that the body is doing something to try to keep itself alive during this time of stress. We start to see it's not being attacked by some disease as we're being told. And when we start to look beyond that programming, we can start to see the brilliance of the design. We can start to see that the body responds in very specific ways to specific stresses. And
Mm.
and this is scientifically proven. It's not just some idea. This is actual scientific fact. But
Mm.
we've never been taught that science. We've only been taught pharmaceutical science, which is completely different than biological law.
Yeah. Yeah. As Keith said in the chat, the mentality is quick fix. Take a proper pill,
Yeah.
and also that the health is an inside job, which it absolutely is. You make a decision. You make a decision to be well, and then you go with that, and you stand firm. And if you're in a situation where you're not being true to yourself, you're not in alignment with who you are, that's where you get the stresses and the strains. When I came out of corporate in 1998, I was earning 75,000. So I don't know how many, 24 years ago, I was earning that amount of money. It was a big job with big stresses and big, paycheck, but it wasn't worth it. I wasn't being me, and I literally walked out because my values were so different to what I was being asked to do. And sometimes, so when people say to me, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that," there's no such thing as calm. In every calm, there's a can. And people say, "Oh, my job, this, that, and the other." You'll find a way. your health, you cannot compromise your health. So whatever job you're doing, whatever your circumstances are, there's always a route out. And sometimes you have to go right down before you can then start going up again. You need to pause and then reconnect once you can then see clarity of which direction you should be going in.
Exactly. You know, the stress happens when when the mind and the soul are not on the same page. When we're going down a path that is not our path, then we feel the stress in our body, because the body is the tool that we use that is connected to the soul. So, you know, if we're on our soul's path, then we feel good. We're in alignment. But when we take a left turn somewhere and we start going south when we're supposed to be going north, the body lets us know, because it starts to feel uncomfortable. It starts to feel uncomfortable when we compromise our values, when we start to do something that we know isn't really quite right or quite ethical, or just somehow it just doesn't, something feels a little off. But because of these gigantic paychecks, because of the money, because we need the money to live, you know, we have all of these pressures to do things for money that compromise who we are. And we get off our own soul's path. But then once we start to let go of those things and trust that inner guidance system and get back on our soul's path, you know, if we're being an attorney and we're supposed to be an artist, then it's a big turnaround. But if we let that go, the thing that we're not supposed to be doing that doesn't feel right, and we actually start pursuing the things that we love, the universe will rearrange itself to make sure that we're supported doing the things that we love. And the people that can help us show up to help us do the things that we love.
Absolutely. Well, that's kind of what got me into trouble doing the things I love, because 2009 I was just finishing a very big assignment. I was managing partner running a big legal team for the biggest local authority in the UK, and I'd got 50 barristers, lawyers, various staff, and I was running that division for them. And I was working sometimes till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then getting up at 6, doing it all, again, on the premise that I enjoyed what I did. I was good at what I did. I enjoyed what I did. It's not work, but the body will go along so long and then go, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to make you stop.
Yeah,
And you were saying about identifying with the body. So many people, myself included, weren't aware of the signs that the body was giving.
that,
So and you compromise. You oh well, I'm getting older now. I should have this ache and pain, or whatever it is. Um, I have no pain. I'm everything is fine. I'm jolly happy, and I live a very very simple life over here in the Algarve, and I've got the least I've ever had in material things, but I'm the happiest ever. And we don't need the big houses and the fast cars and all this sort of thing. It's not necessary.
precisely. You know, I have been on this, my book is called The Simplicity of Self-Healing. And the more simple I make my life, the more powerful, the more profound, the more joyful, the more in alignment I am.
Yeah.
And I think there's great power in simplicity. In I heard one time that you know, the famous quote from Jesus about the meek shall inherit the earth. And I found out that in Aramaic, which was the language he spoke, that the word meek actually it got translated into meek, but it's actually simple. So it's like the simple will inherit the earth. So there's great power in simplicity.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And my husband said my saying is, the older I get, the less I do, the more I achieve.
Yeah. Oh, you're starting to break up just a little bit. I don't know if there's
Okay.
anything that changed on your side.
right, I've decided to sign saying I'm stable. Lots of people say I'm unstable the way I behave and the way I conduct my life, but I'm stable. Yeah, I was saying the older I get, the less I do, the more I achieve.
Precisely. Yes. We have been trained exactly backwards. We've been trained to do more, 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 more. You have to do more to get more, to have more. But we have to be more of ourselves. The more simple it is, the more profound it is, because the more we are simply being ourselves.
It's very simple. It's very simple. We over communicate, over complicate things. But again, that's the indoctrination that we've been given, at schools and society, media, etc. Everything is very, very simple when you boil it down. And then, because when you work at a soul level, a heart level, emotionally, everything is in sync. And then the brain starts getting involved. What if this? What if that? I could have, should have, would have, whatever.
Yeah,
And it's often other people's stuff that we're battling with. It's just stop, pause, and then take a step back, review where you're at, and then apply common sense and follow intuition. I tell my clients all the time, follow intuition. Doesn't matter what I tell you, what the doctors are telling you, and what your family friends are telling you about healing. Follow your intuition, because your body knows. Your body will tell you what it needs, what it wants.
exactly. And that's why Keith is saying healing is an inside job, because we're the only ones that can listen to our inner guidance. And it's that intuition, the intuition, it's the inner knowing. So we have to learn, we have to relearn how to tap into our inner knowing, to our inner guidance system. Because the educational system has us thinking all the time, thinking, 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 try to figure it out, try to logic, try to reason. The soul doesn't need logic or reason. The soul simply knows. The soul has full awareness all the time. And when we get quiet and we start to tune in and listen to the body and look for the stillness, we can simply become aware of the answers. We can find our own way out of anything that we've gotten into. But the external world wants us in our mind. It intentionally complicates everything.
Absolutely spot on.
So I love your story, Elaine. I love that all the things that you have done and accomplished, and all of that, the adversity that you have faced has really made you such a strong, powerful person to know how to stand in your own knowing, in your own power. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, but it's just me, just doing what anybody in similar circumstances would do. There's nothing special about me. I'm just an ordinary person, but this is an ordinary person who I know more what I don't want than what I do want, I suppose now. And that's as a result of having the 4 different versions of cancer and the other adversities and things. Each time I get another insight, so I'm not anymore. I've still got a few bits of skin cancer every now and then that pop up, and I deal with naturally. I don't go anywhere or see anybody about it. I just quietly deal with it on my own,
Mhm.
naturally, and that's the way things should be.
Absolutely. Once one of the biggest lessons that I learned in my own journey was, once I took the label off, once I took the name of the thing away, I thought, if I didn't know what this was called, what would it be? And I realized it would just simply be my body is out of balance. And I realized that it's very easy to bring something that's out of balance back into balance, but it's really hard to cure cancer or some other disease. So I just simply stopped calling anything anything and just simply just address whatever it is. So,
Yeah, I think that's a good approach, and the language that people use is absolutely lifesaver or death sentence. When people say, I have cancer, no, you don't. You are in recovery from, or you're working towards XYZ. If you say, I have, diabetes or whatever it is, you're owning it. And if you're owning something, you're never going to get rid of it, are you? So the language we use is really important.
It is, because everything is consciousness. So we can't have something and not have it simultaneously. We have to choose. And we each have the power to choose. And we can choose what it is that we are going to create. So when somebody gives us one of these labels, this is what you have, well, we can take that label and we can paste it right on our forehead, and we can walk around wearing that label, and we can just live that story, or we can choose differently. And when we choose differently, we can live a completely different story than that. We don't have to go down those rabbit holes. We don't have to create those stories that everybody else in the medical model wants us to create. So we can create the health that we desire, because we are creator beings. So we can create anything we desire, including radiant health and a very simple, happy life.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
definitely is an inside job. And we have to be fully aligned, body, mind, and soul. So, and we can only do that from that internal compass that feels good when we're in alignment, that lets us know.
Yes, I've written that down, Keith, as well. Soundbite of the day. We can't have something and not have something at the same time. I've just made a note exactly the same. I thought that was cool. I'm going to quote you on that, Lisa.
Absolutely. It's right in my book. Have at it. Yeah, it's one of the key awarenesses. I mean, it's so simple, it's so obvious, but it's not as obvious as one would think. So we really have to choose. And you can't walk around saying that you have something if it's something that you don't want,
Mm,
because then
yeah,
you're stuck with it.
yeah.
So this is why, you know, I I'm not a big fan of people going to get to the doctor to get diagnosed with something, because they go in with the question, whether asked or unasked, what's wrong with me? And we never want the answer to that. We
Mm,
don't want something wrong with us. But as soon as we ask the question, we have to receive the answer, because
mm,
that's how the universe works. So when we go in with that question, they're going to say, well, here's what's wrong with you. And here's the solution. Here's all these pills. Here's all this fancy medical stuff. That's the solution. No, the solution is to see that there's not a single thing wrong with us ever, and to just simply realize that if there's something going on in the body is simply pointing us at to where the mind and the soul are no longer in alignment.
mm,
And that's the thing that we have to address, is where we've gone out of alignment with our soul's path and with our soul's integrity. And that's what we have to bring back. That's the actual solution to the problem, is
mm,
to look at where we have gone off the rails
yeah.
and bring ourselves back on. The body is simply going to do its thing. The body is supporting us 24/7, and we should never be afraid of our bodies.
You just need to give it the right environment and it will heal itself. End
Exactly.
of.
Precisely. So when the mind and the soul are in alignment, that's the right environment. When we're feeling good about ourselves, feeling good about our lives, happy, healthy, confident, that's the environment. And if we're not in that environment, it's up to us to create it. And it's an inside job all the time.
Mm.
Beautiful. Elaine, this has been such an amazing conversation. I'm so glad that you chose to come on and have this great conversation. Sorry for our technical glitches today, but not a whole lot I can do about that part. But hey, we made it work. And, oh, except for the fact that I didn't record any of this. I don't.
Yes, you did. Yeah, it's
Oh, did I?
recording.
Okay,
You
awesome.
did. Yeah.
Yay. Oh,
Yeah.
thank goodness. It's not, this is how weird Zoom is today, because it's not showing me that I'm recording it, which
Oh,
is,
well, it says recording, so
oh, I
somebody's
can't
recording
see that.
somewhere.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I can't see it on my side. So that's
Okay.
very odd
All right.
today. But I'm so glad. So, Elaine, you mentioned that you had a podcast, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a guest on your podcast. Tell everybody the name of your podcast and where they can find that.
It's on YouTube at the moment till I get thrown off, but I'm being very careful. We've only had one interview. I've got a friend who is a cancer specialist, and one of her interviews that I did apparently has been thrown off according to my PA. It's the
Okay.
Perfect Health Wellness. I think it's called no, the Perfect Health something or other. I'll just Google me. Well, if you look on my website, let me. I'll put it in the things. Disc plus disc discplus.health. Have a look on there, and there's replays, and you can have access to the web thing on there. And if anybody's got any interesting stories to share, backstories, I'd be happy to interview anybody for the podcast, as I did with Lisa last week.
Beautiful. And I will pop the link to our interview where I was on your podcast. I'll pop that in the Facebook group and on my website. And people can look up yours. If you're watching this on YouTube, just check the show notes and you will see the links in the show notes. And if you're listening on Connecting You to You Radio, do the same thing. Look into the show notes and you will see the links in there. Beautiful. Elaine, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
The pleasure's all mine. Thank you, Lisa. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another Solution Sunday, because the soul is the solution. If anybody is looking to reach out to me, you can find me at connectingyoutoyou.com. So thank you all for joining us. And until next week, create for yourselves a great week. Bye for now.